Welcome to What's Your Story, where we shine a spotlight on individuals who've shaped business and leadership in extraordinary ways. And today we unravel the creative journey of facilitator and global change catalyst Jimbo Clark. He's the man behind the innovative box experience, teaching teams around the world. And he has a quote which is actually has gone on Google, which says, "Everyone tells us to think out of the box, but no one ever tells us what the box really is." I'm so excited to have you here with us today, Jimbo, and get ready, all of you, to open your mind to what might be contained within your box. Jimbo, welcome to the podcast. You are a well traveled man. I know you're in Taipei, you work most of the time in the US, and I'm often told you're found in Brazil very often. So that's the length and the breadth of where your work really takes you. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And it's one of the beautiful things about this day and age that we live in that no matter where our body is, we can be together.
I am so looking forward to this. Let's dive into the podcast. Did you all know that that the phrase "thinking outside the box" actually comes from a literal puzzle, the nine dot problem, where the only way to solve it is by drawing lines that go beyond an imagined square? It's not just a metaphor. It started as a cognitive challenge to break mental models. And in your experience of having worked with so many leaders, my question to you, Jimbo, is when leaders literally wear their self designed box, how are their mental models and self concepts disrupted or not disrupted?
Well, before we get them to wear the box, we get them to understand what the box is. So it's not like you just walk in and stick a box on your head. So we'll actually spend time with them working on what the mental model represents of the box. And then once it has some meaning, then we get it to put it on their heads to experience the feelings and emotions that happen when we're stuck in the box. And then we take them through a process where we go on the inside of their thinking and get them to tear open, to break through some of those limiting beliefs. So my experience of working with leaders is the more senior the leader, the more they really enjoy the process, because as leaders, we so rarely have the chance to really think about what's important to me, about what's holding me back, and to come up with a concrete strategies for getting more of what you want while experiencing less pressure with you and your team. Oh, it's a bargain.
What I'm hearing you say is, are we freaks of nature or are we freaks of nurture?
I think we're just freaks. Let's just be honest, right? Of course, part of it's nurture. Like one way of thinking about it is if you built an artificial mountain and you just constructed an artificial mountain and you put it someplace in the world, and you went and you created the exact artificial mountain in another part of the world, depending on the rain, depending on, the weather patterns, depending on how much close you are to the equator, how much sunlight you're going to get different nooks and crannies, but you're still starting with a mountain. And so at the end, there's going to be some similarities, because if you started with the exact same DNA, then there's going to be some similarities. But as we go through life, we do have experiences. We do create stories. Those stories do create limitations. And so we do get different valleys in our thinking and ruts in our thinking. And, for whatever reason, we consider those ruts to be like givens. Like, I have no choice. I'm just this way. And so we always say that the reason we build a box is to make the unconscious conscious, the invisible visible, so we can take the seemingly impossible and make it actionable. Because for the most part, we are freaks of ignoring our unconscious thinking.
So true. And also, I'm sensing with the hustle bustle of life that we lead, there's so much time spent in action that there's much lesser time spent in reflection, retreat, and to be thinking about what am I doing right? Where could I possibly doing it better? And it's quite a deep, invasive journey. And sometimes our circumstance may allow us and sometimes may not, depending on the business context that I am in. If I'm fighting and dousing fires all the time, can I take a deep breath and actually think about it? So well said. I'm curious to also know from you that Apple taught us that iPhone disrupted the idea of what a phone could be. NASA engineers, put duct tapes and socks and shoes to save their Apollo 13 crew. And sometimes I think while real innovation can be spoken in many ways, but real innovation can also be rejecting the obvious and venturing into what they call the unknown. Most people think that you need freedom to think creatively, but ironically, sometimes even tight constraints can often spark breakthroughs. So, NASA Apollo 13, actually, when the oxygen tank exploded, I did not know, but NASA engineers kind of used a life saving CO2 container they created by just using duct tapes, cardboards, and socks. Now, having worked with multiple leaders, what insights really, as a person to you, led you to create a physical box as a learning tool? It had not been thought of. So, what really started the journey for you?
Well, that's there's two great questions in there, and I'll do it. I'll start with what brought this about. But I love this question about constraints
Yeah.
and constraints in regards to creativity and innovation. So I'll tell you the backstory of the box from the position of constraints.
Yes.
So it was the end of the financial crisis about 15 years ago. And I had a client that came to me and said, I need help with my senior team. They want to go back to the way things used to be instead of forward to the way things need to be. Can you do a training on out of the box thinking? To which, like every good coach, every good consultant, if a client says, can you? The answer is,
Yes.
why, yes, I can. Right. And so, yes, I'd already said yes, but now I'm back in my office and I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this? And there's this moment where it's like, well, what is the box? If we have to think out of the box, what is the box? And I picked up a box off the floor, like an empty paper box. I said, okay, if this is the box, this is thinking in, this is thinking out. Right. And so the constraint of can you do a training on out of the box thinking forced me to create a training on thinking out of the box. And then to make the constraint even more interesting, the hotel that I was doing this program at, I had done a team building a month before where we had a whole bunch of cardboard left over and I'd left it at the hotel. And the hotel kept saying, hey, could you come get that cardboard? Could you come get that cardboard? And so then it was out of the box thinking, cardboard left over at a hotel. We will put boxes upon their heads and it'll be fabulous. If I hadn't had that cardboard just sitting there, would have I really followed through on this crazy idea? And if I hadn't already said yes to the customer's request, would I even think about this as a framework? And so it was those constraints that made me come up with the very first iteration of this idea. What would happen if we just gave people cardboard, box cutters, and markers and asked them, what is your box? And when are you thinking in it and when are you thinking out of it? And how can we do both better?
So, what have you been storing inside the box? The years of talking to yourself. I think it's the inner stories, the stories I
Mm.
tell myself. Those are the ones I keep collecting and put in my box, saying, "This is my repertoire, and this is what I'm really all about." And I think it's you're giving people a chance to kind of open it up to say, "Is it really in there? And is that what you want it to be actually inside there?" Yeah. Do you want to open it up?
And that's the key right there. Is that what you want or is that what you need? Because your box is perfectly designed to get your current results. We say the box, the box is your mindset. And when we're young, our mindset is flexible. But as
Yeah.
we get older and wiser and more experienced, we get our stories about who I am, why I am, what I do, what I don't. All those stories create safety and success. But when we hit these moments of transition, when life changes, either the context changes, my goal changes, my body changes, I grow up, all these things. As life changes, what got me here won't get me there. And if I live an unexamined life, and I don't go back and look at those stories and rethink those stories about who I am and why I am and what I can and what I can't, then I get stuck in my thinking. I get smaller. I get frustrated. We call those boxed in feelings. Boxed in feelings show up. And that's when other people look at you and say, hey, do you need to think out of the box? Or maybe as a team, we get stuck in our how things worked before, and someone says, "Oh, we need to think out of the box." And it's the rewriting of the story of our life so that we get the future that we really want, not the future that we think we can, and not
Yeah.
the future that we think we deserve.
How interestingly put. I'm just very curious, and this conversation is reeling in my mind to say if I go to a senior leader and ask about thinking out of the box, now he is sitting in his corner office, drove in his plush BMW to office in the morning, and it goes back into a multi-million-dollar condominium that he stays in or she stays in. And then
Mm.
when I go with the proposition of, do you want to think outside the box? Do you think this could be a notion in the mind to say, well, everything's already working for me. My story got me where I am today. My box already works.
Oh
Is
yeah.
that something that you've encountered as well?
Of course, of course. And there's a couple things that this brings up. And one is one of my favorite quotes from a participant, which is, my leader tells me to think out of the box, but what they really mean is think inside of their box. Senior leaders, they may say, yeah, we want our people to think out of the box. We want creativity.
Yeah.
But of course, they want creativity within compliance, right? And so that gets us back to constraints. And so constraints is a part of that creative quotient, that creative equation. For senior leaders, there's a great exercise for every program we do, there's one of my favorite exercises. And I can just show you here
Please do.
with the video. So once we get them to determine, we do a little bit of work on the outside of the box, how do I appear and what am I doing now around the topic? So if the topic's leadership, as a leader, what am I doing now? What's working for me? And we talk about my personal brand. When people think about me as a leader, what do I want them to say about me? Am I a go-getter? Am I a leader
Mhm.
that gets things done with consensus or whatever?
Yeah.
And so there's this public persona that we create. You're doing it too with your podcast and the name of your podcast. What's your story? And the questions that you ask, you're creating a persona, but you're so much more than the persona. And so we curate what's on the outside, but sometimes, like this one guy said, my box smiles when I can't. And so even though things look great on the outside, maybe inside things are really high pressure.
Yeah.
So the exercise that we have people do is put the box on your head. And now we get them to grab their phones and take a selfie, and then they get like in a group of 4 or 5 and just take a quick picture. And then they get together with the partner and they just say, when you have this box on my head, what do I experience? So when you have this box on your head, what do you experience? And the experiences are things like, I can't really see you. I can't hear you. I can only hear myself. I can't breathe. I feel claustrophobic, all these things. When we get the leaders to take the box off and everyone takes that big, deep breath, then we say, okay, so you felt like you couldn't see others. Under pressure, you kind of lose contact with others. Under pressure, who's the one person you can hear? It's yourself. Under pressure, are you worried about stepping on? And what we find is out of the experiences and the feelings that you have inside this box, they all map to how we respond to pressure. And the big lie that has been told to leaders is that they have to eat those feelings. As a
Yes.
leader, that's the price you pay for being a leader. Of course, you don't have good relationships with your family. Of course, you don't have good relationship with your health. Of course, you're sacrificing sleep. Of course, this is just a part of being a leader. And what we get them to realize is that if you are willing to open up and, share more of yourself, listen to others, be less judgmental, have a clear image of the future, you can go from that fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And so with the growth mindset, in this growth mindset, I feel great.
Yes.
I have control. I have ownership. For so many leaders, they've never been told that they are in control of their thinking, that they're in control of their feelings, and that these negative feelings are just signals that what you're doing now isn't really working, that maybe there's a better way.
My body always knows. I know deep inside, even if I morphed myself, even if there is a strong armor outside, I know deep down what I'm really going through. And when I
Yeah,
open it, and when you were playing with the box, I was just thinking, there needs to be a little bit of crack because it's through those cracks that the light gets in. That's when, there is sunshine on me. If I close it all
exactly.
up, how's the light's going to ever come in?
Oh, that's beautiful. And we say that it's not that people don't want to change, it's that people don't want to be changed. And so we say that change is a door that must be opened from the inside out. And those cracks that you're talking about, those are you consciously saying, I need a break today. I need to
Yeah.
get together with my friend. I need to go to the gym. I need to ask more questions, right? All of these things are you consciously owning. We say own your box or your box owns you.
Oh, dear.
Right. And so when I own my box, I'm able to open and close so that I can take care of myself and those around me in a way that gets better results while experiencing less pressure. Wouldn't that be nice?
I love the way you said it. You said, own your box or else the box owns you.
For
So,
sure.
so, so beautiful. We spoke about children and we spoke about adults. So, studies actually show that kids kind of outperform adults on divergent thinking because they
Mm.
haven't yet learned the rules of in the box yet, but education over time rewards the right answer over the creative ones. I can speak for Indian education system. If you ask too many questions, you would be made to stand outside the class because you're being notorious. And the teachers' favorite are the ones who have their hands raised for all the answers that they've got right. Now, can you help our audience understand the difference between what we call as convergent thinking versus divergent thinking?
Sure. I mean, and what you're talking about there, we've learned over a lifetime what to put on the outside and what to keep on the inside.
Yeah.
We've learned that asking too many questions is not helpful. We've learned that over disclosing gets you in trouble. We learn, that when the senior person's in the room, you play the game of what do they want to hear as opposed to what do I really think. And that becomes our box. So one of the first parts of thinking out of the box is letting go of the persona,
Hmm.
right? And so when we say own your box, one of the things we get them to do is we actually get them to open it up and take a picture with it open and then look and see, wow, look how much more of my real self am I showing out when I open up than when I'm not. And the fear of divergent thinking is that if I really say what's going on inside this crazy mind of mine, people are going to judge me.
Yeah.
And people are going to either see me as not being creative when I thought I was, or people are going to see me as being irrelevant or see me as being irreverent in the meeting, questioning authority, all of these things. And when we're young and dumb and we just do it, then we get in trouble.
Yeah.
And that could happen in school. When you're new in a company, it could happen when you're a new manager. And so we learn to keep our mouths shut. So owning the box, learning how to let a little bit more of my light shine and being just a little bit more curious than authoritative are great ways to help that divergent thinking in self and others.
So true. Yes.
So that divergent part, the key to the divergent part is I have to let go of my persona, which is why we do brainstorming, why we do brain writing, why so many times when we're doing that creative work, we have people close their eyes or get out of themselves because they have to let go of, that face, that persona to say those things that they wouldn't normally say. The divergent part is when we have a question that we don't have an answer for, we diverge out. As we diverge out, as we get further and further out, then we get to the area that either turns into conflict
Yeah.
or turns into conversation.
Sure. I love it. Conflict versus conversation.
If I hold on to my lenses that I
Mm.
look through, my perspective, my company, maybe I've been there for 15 years, I'm head of finance, blah, blah, blah. So I'm looking through the finance lens. I'm looking through the 15 years of how we do things lens. As
Mm.
long as I keep those lenses, then we have conflict.
Yeah.
But if we can go divergent in a way where we open up to each other, now we have conversation, right?
Ah.
Generative conversation. And one of my favorite exercises to do, and we can't do this virtually with you today, but if you imagine a group of 20 people and everybody has a box, and what we can do is there's a little Velcro on these boxes. So one box can connect to another box, connect to another
Okay.
box. And then we all go inside the box together. And we kind of create this sense of intimacy in a group, And so this is a conversation. This is possibility generating, This is I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
My box is better than your box.
Yeah, because I've been working on mine for 61 years and I'm pretty successful and I don't want to jeopardize that.
No.
So
Absolutely
that
not.
convergent thinking is we always say don't just think out of the box, build a better box.
Yeah.
So the convergent thinking requires adjustments to how things get done. Otherwise, the out of the box idea stays out of the box.
Hmm.
So if I have an out of my box idea, I'm going to have to open up a doorway and adjust my thinking to make space for that. And if I'm doing that alone, it's hard. But if I'm in a group, I say, gosh, that's a great idea, but I don't have the resources. Someone else in the company says, oh, we got resources. What do you need? We change the box. And
Make it a
so
bigger
the
box.
ideas that we generate outside of the box are there to change the box rather
Uh,
than achieve the result.
so I'm hearing you say change the box. I heard you say moving from a zone of conflict into, you said, generative conversations.
Yeah.
When all these open boxes come together, whenever you've done this for, say, a team of top leadership together,
Mm.
have they as a team decided what we are going to not say anymore? Are there some common phrases that come up saying, we're
Yeah.
going to ban these words or penalize for you every time you use those? What are some of those?
Oh yeah. So with a leadership team, with an intact team, we turn the room into a box.
Okay, a bigger
And so now
box.
just like there's four walls on the inside of this box, there's four walls that we have here. And so the first thing we have to do is this is our image for our success image. So we have a target that has a heart that's
Hmm.
puzzling. And so there's something in the future that we care about, but it's conflicting.
Yeah.
And so as a team, as an individual, we have them think about, what do I want for the company? What do I want for me? What are these outcomes I want to be creative for? But then as a team, we have to create our shared success image.
So true.
We've done that, then we can start saying, to get the shared success image, what do we have to do less of,
Yeah.
and what do we need to do
One
more of?
different
Yeah, yeah.
to make the
And
difference.
that's where those things like the big one that I hear a lot is, can we just have fewer emails? Can we just talk to each other? Can you just stop by my office is just next to you. Can we, fewer meetings, more conversations? That's the one I hear a lot of.
Lot more often. Very interesting. Now, if perfectionism were a medicine, the label should read warning, may cause stunted growth. Because
Mm,
perfectionism is so important, it's going to lead to a tunnel vision, it's going to lead to ever error avoidance, prevents us from seeing the larger problems and limit to a very, very narrow scale. How might one's own filter lead to inner breakthroughs or shifts in how they view themselves and also the world?
that's
Are
beautiful.
there particular themes or filters that people have come up to you with saying, maybe it was my conditioning, maybe it was my education? Are there some specific filter pillars that things have fallen into?
Well, I think it's a great question because it brings up so many thoughts for me. In terms of the contradictions, right? What we'll do on the inside is we'll have them create this beautiful success image. Just we keep telling, ask for more, ask the genie for what you really want. And then how do we make decisions? We make decisions like a battery.
Yeah.
Some things energize me and some
And
things
some,
de-energize me.
yeah.
So and then my favorite exercise is, I want this, but
But
contradiction, right? And so I have all these contradictions, and so many of the initial contradictions focus on scarcity. I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough experience, I don't have enough education, whatever, right? If you go a little bit deeper, they start going into, my family won't support me, I've got some kind of illness, I've got some kind of a disability. There's all these stories that we've told ourselves.
yeah,
And so what we do is we just get them to write all these things. We get a big long list of them. In fact, here I can show you.
please do.
Let's show you mine. So this is my beautiful success image. Here's all the reasons why this can't happen,
That's a
right?
lot. I'm glad that you're able to put it out there. It takes
Yeah.
a lot of vulnerability to fill up that page, which really says, these are some of my limiting beliefs.
And then the question that we ask people is, take a look at these two pages. Which
Yeah,
one do you want? Do you
yeah.
want the future success, in which case you're going to have to challenge?
Hmm.
Or do you want to keep believing what you've always believed, in which case you're going to have to compromise?
Yeah, and you'll get what you've always got.
Yeah. And so then when we challenge, we get them to physically open up the door and decide, okay, of these, maybe there's just one or two that we can just let out the door, let out the exit.
I love these mini doors and windows. It's almost like a window
Yes.
to my soul. I let something come in because I've been holding the fort so long. I am the bread earner. I am the main earner of the family. I'm supposed to be the head of the family. And this is irrespective of gender. I'm holding the fort so tight that if I don't have these little windows, I'm going to get so suffocated within. I'm probably just living the same life over and over again, years multiplied, calling it life, but it was actually just the same day being repeated over and over again. So I'm remembering a time, it was many years back. I used to still work for Baxter. It's a US based healthcare company. And I remember I had a boss. And one day we were working on a project with Japan, and I did not know the language. I didn't really know the people. And I was working on my desk. There were papers all over. He walked over to my desk and he said, "What are you doing?" And I thought, here comes my Messiah, and he's going to take care of all my problems and he's going to give me all the solutions. And I told him my rant story. And after he was done hearing me, patient listener, this is what he said next. He said, "Whose house is on fire?" I said, "If you call it that way, it's my house which is on fire." And he said, who should know where the water is? I said, I should know where the water is. So he says, find water, douse the fire, and that's what you do. And I looked at him and I was like, what kind of a manager I'm stuck here with? And of course, he didn't give me any solutions. I went by, did my work, and there came a point where he was getting, he was moving into another organization and moving into Shanghai. I told him, you remember what a pain you were to me? Or you would never tell me anything what to do. He said, Kanika, if I had solved the problem for you that day, I would have made you eat fish for a day. But since I made you fish your fish, you're going to eat fish for a lifetime. I didn't understand the meaning then. Many years later, I really understood what he was really saying. When we talk to senior leaders, while I'm working on my box, but it's also my responsibility to work with people and help them make a better box as well. So, what do you think is the focus of coaching, maybe mentoring, that you think really helps us as leaders to help create a better box of my function, my division, and my teams? Your thoughts?
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for sharing that story. Now I see why you have the title, What's Your Story? You're a great storyteller. And because it evokes something, right? I find the best leaders in the world are those who have found for themselves their why. They are clear on their why and have learned how to make the hard transition from I'm sticking to my why instead of taking the easy way out. And as they've learned how to do that, they recognize people like you also have that why in them, and they inspire us to want more from life than we think we deserve, than we think we can get. And so we think we got a job, but actually we ended up getting like career development and so much more, relationship building and all this. When we as leaders, and then you talk about coaches and teams, every single person in the room is negotiating with themselves with their future.
I like
And
that.
everyone's saying, maybe I can work another 5 years instead of retiring at this time. Maybe I just can do this instead of this. They're accepting trade-offs until they meet someone who's listening to their energy as they're talking about the future. And when we start, hedging on the future, we don't want to fail. And so we're willing to ask for less. And I think what a good coach does and what a good leader does is say, no, I'm not going to allow you to accept less. I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to inspire you. I'm going to ask you questions so that you really come to clarity on what you really want. Once you have that clarity, then we can start thinking about the hows and what we need to let go of and what we need to try. And so you got to start experimenting. And you've got a story, I'm not smart enough. Well, experiment with that story. Test it out, sign up for some training course, take a class.
Yeah.
See, for me, I had a story. I could never write a book. I can't focus long enough to write a book. Well, I wrote a book. We have to question our assumptions. And the way that we question our stories about ourselves is by having a vision of the future that is more compelling than the story of failure. I think that's what great coaches do. They're not just inspiring, but they're also helping you figure out, what do I need to let go of so I can try something else?
And how their box may not have all the right answers. So I'm
No.
sensing great coaches help you to build a better box, a bigger box, a longer lasting box, and they're not taking off their box and putting onto you to saying, do it this way.
Yeah.
In fact, most organizations I've worked with, one of their values and leadership attribute is think out of the box. It is curiosity, but they often penalize it.
Yeah.
Many companies claim to value creativity, but they reward conformity, especially in performance reviews and promotions. True innovation often comes from breaking protocol. And I'm not saying in the literal sense of breaking protocol, but protocol of this is the way things are done here, which is risky in hierarchical environments. So my question to you is, when you work with future forward organizations, are they aligning their rewards and performance matrices to the age old bell curve? Or do you see them moving away from these old adaged assessment processes? What has been your experience?
My experience is there's no simple answer. If we look at it from a continuum,
Yeah.
there's two extremes. On one extreme, you've got a company that says, oh, we value innovation, we value creativity, we're going to put all these systems into place and try to make it. And then once I start working in the organization, of course, what you find out is people want success. Shareholders have a very short time frame. If it's not done wisely, it can become demeaning because people think you're bulletproof when you get shot. So that's the one end of it where it's something that they talk about, and they do it, and they are more innovative than they would be if they didn't do it too. Then there's the other end of this where, it is very hierarchical and it's not an on the table thing. But then
Yeah.
you got tons of people throughout the organization that are swimming in gray. If you know the story about how this is quite a while ago, Motorola first came up with the Razor phone. If you know that, do you know that story where they had to go out of the way that they were doing things because everything was Six Sigma, everything was about process control, and these guys just said, "This isn't getting us cool. Let's have a side project that's cool." Now of that, they got one of the biggest phones ever for the company. So innovation exists in both,
Yeah.
and then for the individual, it's just a different kind of disenchantment. But either way, unless you're an entrepreneur, you're
Yeah.
going to be disenchanted by the structure of an organization. And even as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
I bring all kinds of crazy great ideas to my two partners, and
Yeah.
they just look at me and say, "Nope,
No.
we ain't doing that."
That can be tough.
So what I always tell people is, there's no shortage of ideas. When you try something and it doesn't work, don't get too upset. If I had a tattoo, which I don't, if I had a tattoo on my
You can have a
chest,
t-shirt.
okay, I could get a t-shirt. It would say everything's a prototype, including me. So there is no final product in life. And
I
so
love
just
that.
keep prototyping. Just keep prototyping.
Wasn't it, I think, President Kennedy who said with determination that we choose to go to the moon not because it was easy, but because it was hard? And I have often said that in leadership conversation, when we're having, it's not about just having a difficult conversation and just choosing, making a new box, and this box version of mine is going to be more brash, it's going to be more argumentative, I'm going to go out there and speak everything. It's still with the realm of a filter to say, am I being a rebel here? Or am I doing it for a cause? And if it's a cause, can I be subtle with it? Can I be objective with it? Can I use the right language? So it's not just, breaking shackles to be the rebel version of yourself. It's breaking your box to create a beautiful version really of yourself, is what I'm really hearing from what you're saying.
I did a training once, and the first question from a very smart gentleman was, if everyone thinks out of the box all the time, how do we get anything done? And he's exactly right. I would never argue that out of the box is better than in the box.
Hmm.
It's that when you're in the box thinking isn't working for
Hmm.
you,
Yeah.
you got a choice. Am I going to continue to suffer through this and stay in what some people call the comfort zone? I call it my confident zone because I'm not always comfortable. So
Yeah.
do I stay in my confident zone doing what I've always done,
Hmm.
confident that I'll figure it out in the end?
Hmm.
Or am I going to go out of my box, look for new ideas and possibilities, and then build a bigger box, a
Hmm.
better box that allows for that to happen?
So true.
And it's not that one is better than the other. There are times when you need to just shut up and just do the plan and don't listen to other people and stay focused. And, there are just times when you just got to get the work done,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And the delineator to me is, am I learning? Am I growing? Am I getting the results that are leading me towards what I want? Or am I
Yeah.
stuck? And if I'm stuck, then that's a good signal that, that nature nurture that we started with,
Hmm.
you know,
Nature's the nature freaks. Yeah.
so that I can move towards the nurture side.
Hmm.
And I can start saying, okay, like for example, at the age of 60, I got diagnosed with ADHD. I spent the first 60 years of my life not knowing, not really understanding ADHD or what it means to me or others. Now I understand my nature. I'm neurodivergent. There's a lot of things that happen because of how my brain is wired. But because I understand that, now I can nurture myself in a different way. I can create structure. I can create routines. I can care for that by building a better box. I'm both a nature and a nurture freak. And together, I can build this better box that allows me to live a life more worth living, both in the work and out of the work.
And that can be so authentic. And thank you, Jimbo, for your vulnerability to say this on a podcast for people out there to really hear. But you've turned it around to your benefit to say, okay, this is my nature. I'm born with it. It's my part of my DNA. But what is the part of my reality today? And I'm hearing you say that we don't want to be bulldozing our boxes. We want to be building a better box, a box that's more authentic to me, allows me to, play with who I have become today. My box has made me who I am today. So how do I take this person today and make a better version of myself, a better box really for myself? Now, before I end the podcast, I wanted to share with you that the average span of a company listed in the New York Stock Exchange was about 61 years. And now one company is dropping off the New York Stock Exchange every 2 weeks. So 75% of the S&P firms in 2011 will be replaced by new ones in 2027. And that is how the new reality, the new realm of the world really today is. So how would you invite organizations to be thinking out of the box?
When it comes to change, I think there are two big motivators. One is what you might call the burning platform. He calls
Mhm.
it burning platform. He tells a story about how there's a oil platform. I think it's near off the coast of Greenland. It's cold water, and the oil platform's on fire.
Okay.
And so you've got a choice. I'm either going to burn on the platform, or I'm going to jump into this cold water and hope I'm saved. And this is, I think, the cheap motivation for change. And this is what teachers use. If you don't do your homework, you're going to get an F. We build so much tension and fear around, if we don't change this, then we're going to go out of business, or you're going to lose your jobs, or blah blah blah. And so you have to change. And it's not wrong. Sometimes when the house is on fire, you don't turn on the television. The other need for change is what they call the burning ambition. That I, as a human being, whatever I am at today, there's a part of me that knows intrinsically that I can have a bigger impact, that I can live a bigger life, that I can do something more with myself than I am right now. And so the more that you're clear on your burning ambition, the easier it is to make some of those difficult decisions. What I would say, going back to your question, companies that are clear on their burning ambition,
I like
that have
that.
clarity on why we're here and what is it that we're really trying to do. And is this more important than me selling out to a VC firm? Is this more important than us cashing our chips? If we're only here to cash out the chips or sell to a VC firm, then we have to expect a short lifespan. But if we're in the business of leaving this world as something better than it was when we started, and you can call that sustainability, you can call that, corporate responsibility, whatever you want to call it. I call it being human. If we're willing to be humane on
Hmm.
this earth, then we can use that as a way of guiding what we do. And whether the corporation survives or not is actually secondary to what did I do with my time here? And so that's what I think is the real question that I would pose to leaders is, why are you here in terms of the business, but also why are you here in terms of the families and communities that you care about? Make more of that happen and
So
worry a little bit less about this percentage point or about,
And that could
yeah.
follow. If you do the right thing, it will. And I think it was Adam Grant, I read it in his book, where he said a lot of time procrastination is not a time management problem, it's an emotion management problem. So, how do you manage that emotion, the humanity of your relevance of what you're doing today? Thank you so much, Jimbo. I heard you speak about the burning ambition. We spoke about negotiating our future by still looking at our past. And I really love that lovely quote from you: own your box, or your box is going to really own you. We've unpacked the psychology of myths and bold breakthroughs. And have you seen those Amazon videos about unboxing? When they buy a new product, they kind of unbox it. And I'm hoping this video is an invitation to people to really unbox themselves. And once they've unboxed themselves, put up a video on social media to say, oh, I took this chance to unbox myself, and this is a newer version for me to play in front of all of you today. Thank you so much, Jimbo. Thank you for your time. It's been my humble honor to have you on the podcast. So much to learn, and I wish you more success around the world. I know you've traveled to 40 countries for work. I hope there's more, because every corner of the world needs to build a better box, and I'm sure you are the harbinger of change. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. I had a great time and I enjoyed the stories and the storytelling.